Out now from Dark Force Entertainment is another in their Dark Force Drive-In series. It is a combination disc, or it's two movies. It is 1976's MAKO, The Jaws of Death, and 1979's BOG, which is one of those video covers I always remember seeing. It was one of those big plastic clamshell cases with a gooey title BOG on the cover, and I never got around to renting it. So it's one of those movies that I've had a curiosity about for decades that has just been satisfied with this Blu-ray disc. So the way this works out is like the other one of these. They've done these for a while, and I've never seen one of these Dark Force drive-in discs until pretty recently. The menu comes up, and it looks like a drive-in marquee, and you can pick either film or the extras or the Demon drive-in mode, which basically plays one movie and then some trailers and then a full snack bar intermission and then the second movie, which is pretty cool, and it's fun the way they do that. So, but the way they always do it though is the running order of the films on the menu is not the same running order as they play in the drive-in mode. So this disc lists BOG first and then MAKO Jaws of Death, and if you hit the Demon drive-in mode, it plays MAKO Jaws of Death and then BOG, which it's, I guess, debatable which should have gone first or would have gone first at a drive-in. Some drive-ins would put the main feature second, so you had to kind of sit through the B movie to get to the A movie, and some would put the A movie up front and the second movie was there if you wanted to hang out. And I think that's the way Dark Force tends to line these up, is they put the better or stronger title first on these double feature discs. Anyway, MAKO Jaws of Death is a really, really fun film from director William Grefe, Florida filmmaker. Stars Richard Jaeckel as a crazy man, as a man who is a friend to sharks. He loves sharks. The film, I'm not going to tell you the whole story, film opens with Jaeckel swimming underwater with sharks while this guy on a fishing boat, who you will recognize a lot of people, including this guy, if you watched a lot of 70s exploitation movies. The guy played the king in Fairy Tales, and on the boat is another guy who was in the movie Bloodstalkers, which was also shot in Florida, and another guy I didn't recognize. And basically it's a fishing boat sea fishing boat for hire. The customer is trying to hook a shark. There's the ship's mate and the captain, and Jaeckel is underwater. He basically cuts the line so that the shark goes free and goes on the boat and just kills all the guys because they're messing with his friends, the sharks. And as the film goes on, we find out why he feels that way about sharks and why he has this. As Val said, he's the shark whisperer, but he's crazy. So the film basically goes along. The basic premise of this is Jaeckel's this guy who loves sharks. He doesn't want anybody poaching them. He doesn't want them having a bounty placed on them. And he goes crazy at some point, and he enacts shark-based revenge, and it's wonderful. It's a great slice of 1976 Florida. It apparently all was shot either on actual locations and interiors, not sets or anything like that. So you're seeing real rural, down and dirty Florida at the time. It features Harold Oddjob Sakata from Goldfinger as like a thug. It features a heavyset guy that I knew as being in Super Fuzz, and another guy who was in Super Fuzz, a film I love, shot in Florida few years after this. It's a lot of I feel like about people who were actors in Florida the same way I do when I used to watch the Avengers TV show, that 60s Avengers UK show. It's a small country. There are only so many actors in England, and sooner or later you use them all a few times, and that's what it's like with Florida films. So it's a lot of familiar faces. The transfer, here's where it gets interesting. The transfer on this looks great. This movie looks great. And funny enough, too, it starts with a disclaimer basically saying the producers wish to thank the people who worked on this film, who all worked without cages or protective gear in shooting this. And when you see it, there are people swimming right next to sharks, and the cameras are really close to sharks. And this is looked to be a pretty dangerous movie to shoot. So here's a little thing. I was like, man, I feel like I've got this movie somewhere. I feel like I've seen this recently. I feel like I have a copy of this that's got a commentary or something. And I looked into it. This film is also part of Arrow Video's He Came from the Swamp, the William Grefe collection. Different transfer and extras. So while I was watching this, I'm like, man, I really want a commentary where I find out how dangerous was this and how did they do this and all that. And I think the Arrow set has that. There are no major extras on this set. Transfer looks gorgeous. But there was a point I noticed. They made reference to nighttime. And I think these are supposed to be day for night scenes, and it looks totally bright. And I pulled up a copy of this on YouTube, and I had a friend look into his copy on the Arrow set, and sure enough, the day for night scenes on this Blu-ray for MAKO, The Jaws of Death, are not color timed to be dark to look like it's nighttime. So it doesn't really hurt the film, although the filmmaker intended certain sequences to take place at night, and now they don't in this film. And you'll see somebody driving with his headlights on during the day, and you'll hear somebody make a reference to it being the middle of the night. And you'll see people in a bar, a crowded bar, and then they walk out and it's the afternoon, which I guess is possible in Florida in some places. But it's a mistake. So the upside, I guess, is if you're a big fan of MAKO Jaws of Death, you are getting scenes that you've never seen totally clearly, razor sharp. There's, like I may have said, there's some speckling on the print, but overall it looks really, really good. And it sounds great. It's just, it is technically a mistake that there's several scenes in this film that should be a lot darker than they are just bright and clear. As I said, no extras on this, but it is a really fun drive-in kind of movie. You do see some, dead sharks here and there. I don't know that they were necessarily, well, you never know. It was the 70s. I don't think they were killed for the making of the film, but you don't really see shark carnage on film or anything, because this film is about a guy who loves sharks and enacts some very wonderful and creative shark-based revenge. And there is sequences shot in a restaurant, which I think I read in the other release of this, that is still there, where you go into this restaurant or bar and it looks like you're under the part of a ship. It looks like you're in a ship's, whatever you call it, the basement of a ship. I'm dumb about boats. And there are windows where there's a woman swimming like a mermaid in there, and that comes into play in the story too. So MAKO the Jaws of Death is great, looks great. It's just that it's the color timing was incorrect in some sequences. So the other half of this double feature disc is BOG. It's just fun to say, and it's amusing to me because it is British slang term for a turlet. BOG, which stars Gloria, DeHaven, and Aldo Ray. It stars a bunch of middle-aged people, and there's nothing wrong with that. But as I'm watching it, I'm like, you would never see a movie like this now. The entire cast of this film is middle-aged people. There's a bizarre, what's the movie about? I'll get to that. There's a middle-aged couple having a tender, extended, smooching, tender love scene in this film, which feels totally out of place anyway, and it has this weird, like, middle-of-the-road female vocalist kind of song, siren singing ballad over the top of them smooching, and I'm just like, I don't think this scene was steaming up the windows at the drive-ins back in 79. I don't know. The film was shot in 1978 in Wisconsin, and it is about a creature somebody's fishing with dynamite. He's playing with fire, he's cooking with gas, he's fishing with dynamite, and he awakens some creature from the bottom of this lake, this bog lake, I believe it's called, creatively and poetically. And the creature needs to feast on blood. So the creature nabs people, drains them of their blood, leaves them behind, and then goes to sleep until it gets hungry again. So it's kind of like in broad terms, like a vampire underwater. You don't really see the creature. Eventually you do, and then you think, I can see why we didn't see the creature for a lot of the film. It is a really rough costume with this weird giant bug-eyed monster head that looks like something out of The Outer Limits or The Horror of Party Beach. It's a pretty slow and sluggish movie overall. It's very cheap. Interestingly, at one point, we see Charles Pitt, who you may know as the lead from Russ Meyer's Super Vixens, which was shot a couple years earlier. Apparently he was in Wisconsin for some reason. Tiny role as a cop on the force in like one scene. It's not a great movie. It's not even a very good movie, but it really fits in the context of what this disc is trying to do. It feels like a movie you would see laid on the bill at a drive-in. It's the kind of movie that a drive-in would advertise, a double feature, triple feature, Dusk Till Dawn show, and they get these titles that who knows what they are. They're a movie. You paid for 4 movies. I'm going to give you a movie, and that's the one that they would play toward the end where people were either asleep, deep into the foggy window territory, or had left and it didn't matter, but they're doing what they said they were doing by playing X number of films. This feels like that. It also gives you, much like MAKO did, it gives you a look at actual life in 1978. Not the whole creature part, that's all bogus, but the stuff about, this is what people were wearing, the interiors are all interiors. I don't think they were doing much in the way of sets for this film, and the exteriors and old signage and old cars and all that. So it is like a nice little slice of late 70s life. So it's in the only extra on here really is promotional gallery, publicity gallery for BOG. It opens with, and I hope you have a big TV and you need to freeze frame this, a hilarious bad review of BOG, right down to the rating example of why it was rated what it was rated. It's somebody hated this movie and was really good and clever and a good writer about how much they didn't like it. So it's a mix of reviews, newspaper articles about the film being made and being released, and old print ads. And like the if you look at the cover of it, they use an old ad mat for that. So I really like these Dark Force Entertainment releases. It is a little weird about the color timing thing, and it is a little weird. I don't understand that Dark Force has titles out that other companies also can currently have in print and available. I don't understand it. It's interesting. And in most cases, I will say, though, the Dark Force prints sometimes look better. They have a release of Moonlighting Wives, Joe Sarno's film out, that to me looks far better than the Film Movement release. And I don't know if the running times are different. I don't remember. I wanted to look at my Arrow copy of the William Grefe collection. He Came from the Swamp with MAKO, The Jaws of Death, to see what the Arrow transfer looked like versus this one. But this one looks really, really good if it wasn't for that one weird flaw. So available now on Blu-ray from Dark Force Entertainment is the Dark Force drive-in double feature, MAKO, The Jaws of Death, and BOG.